Duke Sebastian ordered the winter nursery sealed 8 months after their daughter's burial. By noon, 2 workmen were covering the walls with fresh paper. By sunset, Catherine's tools had been taken from her, her household allowance suspended, and her surviving child placed under the supervision of Mrs. Lavinia Wren. Sebastian announced each decision in the upper corridor, where servants could hear him. "You will surrender every key connected with the nursery," he said. "You will no longer enter this room or question Oliver about his sister." Catherine looked through the open doorway. Nothing inside had changed since the morning Amelia was declared dead. The small bed remained beneath its white canopy, a faded constellation stretched across the ceiling, painted by Catherine after Amelia began asking why stars disappeared at dawn. Beside the fireplace stood the brass grill Catherine had installed to prevent smoke from collecting on the upper floor. She had designed the nursery's ventilation system herself. That was why she knew the official explanation for Amelia's death could not be true. Dr. Elias Vale had blamed a failure in the air channels, claiming fumes from the fireplace had weakened Amelia's lungs. Sebastian had accepted his conclusion without ordering an independent examination. Catherine had objected, demanded that the chimney be opened, and asked why their daughter had been given a red cordial after she was already struggling to remain awake. Sebastian had answered by calling her grief irrational. Now he intended to seal the room before she could examine it again. "The vents did not fail," Catherine said. "Someone blocked them." Sebastian's expression tightened. "We have discussed this. You dismissed it. That is not the same thing." One of the workmen lowered his eyes. The other continued smoothing wallpaper across the wall beside Amelia's bed. Lavinia stood a short distance behind Sebastian, dressed in the silver-gray mourning clothes she had worn since arriving at Ashbourne Hall. Officially, she had come to help care for Oliver while Catherine recovered from Amelia's death. In practice, she had gradually taken possession of the schoolroom, the servants' schedule, and Sebastian's confidence. "You have spent 8 months searching this room for something that is not here," Sebastian said. "Oliver now wakes in the night because you question him about medicine, footsteps, and voices in the walls. I questioned him because he said someone entered Amelia's room after midnight. He was 5 years old and grieving. He is still 5 years old. Yet you trust Lavinia's interpretation of his words more than mine." Lavinia lowered her gaze with practiced restraint. "I never asked His Grace to distrust you," she said softly. "No," Catherine replied. "You merely supplied him with a more convenient version of every event." Sebastian stepped between them. "That is enough." The workman beside the bed drove a nail through the new wallpaper. Something crackled behind it. A folded piece of paper slipped through the torn seam and landed on the floor. Everyone became still. Catherine reached it first. The scrap had been folded into a narrow square and hidden in the shallow space behind the wooden molding. Its edges were stained with dust. Across the center ran 4 uneven lines written in a child's hand. "Papa's red medicine makes me sleep. The lady changes the bottle. Mama said air must always move. I hid this where the air goes." Catherine stopped breathing. She knew the backward curve of the final letter. She knew the way Amelia pressed too heavily at the beginning of each word and allowed the ink to fade toward the end. "This is her writing," Catherine said. Sebastian took the paper from her. For the first time that day, certainty left his face. Lavinia moved closer. "Children copy one another's hands. Perhaps Lord Oliver wrote it after his sister died. Oliver cannot write a complete sentence. Then Amelia must have hidden it before she became ill." Catherine turned the paper toward the window. A pale emblem appeared within its fibers. a bell surrounded by two hawthorn branches. Bell and Harrow. Catherine had helped the stationer's widow secure the lease for that shop. She remembered the first consignment of paper because Mrs. Bell had sent her a box in gratitude. The shop had opened 3 months after Amelia's burial. This paper did not exist when Amelia died, Catherine said. Sebastian examined the watermark. You may be mistaken. I negotiated the lease. His eyes remained on the emblem. The workman who had driven the nail stepped backward. Catherine noticed him then, not his clothing or the paste on his hands, but the pale scar disappearing behind his left ear. She had seen it before. On the night Amelia died, a man with that scar had waited near the nursery stairs, wearing an Ashbourne footman's coat. Catherine had assumed he belonged to the temporary servants Vale brought into the house during the illness. You were here that night, she said. The man's face lost its color. Sebastian looked at him. What is your name? The workman glanced toward the end of the corridor. Lavinia stood there beside the servants' staircase. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met. Then the man ran. He shoved the second workman aside, overturned a bucket of paste, and disappeared through the narrow stairwell. "Stop him!" Catherine shouted. Sebastian's steward, Mr. Harrow, pursued him immediately. Catherine gathered her skirts to follow, but Sebastian caught her arm. You will remain here. He knows what happened to Amelia. You do not know that. He recognized the message, and he looked at Lavinia before he fled. Lavinia recoiled. Are you accusing me because a frightened laborer happened to look in my direction? I am asking why he expected help from you. Catherine, Sebastian warned. Below them, a door slammed. Catherine pulled free and ran down the servants' staircase. She followed the noise through the lower passage and into the kitchen courtyard. Harrow had reached the workman near the eastern gate. The man struggled violently, but 2 grooms seized his arms and forced him to the ground. Catherine stopped several feet away. Who hired you to seal the nursery? The workman stared at the frozen gravel. Sebastian entered the courtyard behind her, followed by Lavinia and several servants. Answer her grace, Harrow ordered. The man's breathing was ragged. Blood marked his lip where he had struck the gatepost. My name is Thomas Reed, he said. Were you at Ashbourne on the night Lady Amelia died? Catherine asked. He closed his eyes. Yes. A murmur passed through the servants. What were you doing outside her room? Thomas looked toward Sebastian. I was told to wait for Dr. Vale. Why? I don't know. Catherine stepped closer. You ran because you knew that message had been written after Amelia's burial. Thomas said nothing. Did you see my daughter after Vale declared her dead? His face tightened with fear. Thomas, Catherine said, if someone threatened you, remaining silent will not protect you now. I never saw what happened inside the room. That was not my question. Thomas looked at her at last. I saw them carry her out. Catherine felt the courtyard disappear around her. Carry her where? To a carriage at the eastern gate. Who was with her? Dr. Vale and another person. I could not see the face. Sebastian's voice came from behind Catherine. Our daughter was taken to the family chapel. Thomas shook his head. No, Your Grace. Sebastian went still. Thomas swallowed. The chapel is west of the house. That carriage went north. Catherine forced herself to ask the question she had been afraid to form. Was Amelia alive? Thomas's eyes filled with shame. I heard her coughing beneath the blanket. Sebastian seized him by the front of his coat. You watched someone remove my living child and said nothing? Dr. Vale told me she would die before sunrise. He said Her Grace had poisoned her by altering the vents. He threatened my wife if I spoke. Where is your wife now? Thomas looked toward Lavinia again. She disappeared 2 days after the funeral. Lavinia's face remained composed, but one hand tightened around the edge of her cloak. Catherine saw it. So did Sebastian. This was the moment she had waited 8 months for. The instant when evidence finally forced him to question the people he had chosen over her. Then Lavinia spoke. A terrified laborer has told Her Grace precisely what she wished to hear. We do not know whether he was paid to invent this story, or whether she arranged the message herself. Catherine turned toward her. Sebastian did not immediately defend Lavinia. His attention remained fixed on Thomas. Catherine allowed herself one breath of hope. Then Sebastian looked at the servants gathered beneath the archway. She watched uncertainty give way to the old fear that governed him, the fear of scandal, disorder, and appearing unable to control his own household. "Harrow," he said, "confine this man in the gatehouse until the magistrate can question him." "That is sensible," Catherine replied. "Now send someone for an independent physician and order the nursery left untouched." Sebastian faced her. "The nursery will still be sealed." The hope died. "You have just heard that Amelia left this house alive. I heard an unknown laborer make an accusation. You heard a witness contradict Vale's account. And until his story is tested, I will not permit you to spread panic through this household. I am not spreading panic. I am trying to discover where our daughter was taken." "Daughter is dead. You no longer know that." The words struck him before every watching servant. Sebastian's expression hardened. "Give me your keys." Catherine looked down at the ring attached to her belt. "If you seal that room now, you may destroy the only evidence Amelia managed to leave us. You will surrender them. And Oliver? He will remain with Mrs. Wren until I am satisfied that you will not frighten him with these accusations." Lavinia placed a gentle hand on Sebastian's sleeve. Catherine saw the movement and understood what Sebastian's order truly meant. He was not merely closing a room. He was placing their remaining child under the control of a woman connected, at least by Thomas's repeated glances, to Amelia's disappearance. "Someone gave Amelia a red medicine," Catherine said. "If the same bottle remains in this house, Oliver may be in danger." "Enough!" Sebastian's voice echoed across the courtyard. "You have accused my physician, my mother's companion, and now members of my household. Until the magistrate examines this man's claims, you will not approach Oliver without another adult present." The servants lowered their eyes. Catherine slowly removed the ring of keys. She placed it in Sebastian's palm. "You may take my authority," she said, "but if anything happens to Oliver, you will never be able to say that no one warned you." A bell rang inside the house, once, then twice. Catherine looked toward the upper floor. It was the nursery bell, the one connected by wire to the wall beside Amelia's former bed. No one was supposed to be inside that room. A maid appeared at the kitchen entrance, white-faced and struggling for breath. "Your Graces, what happened?" Sebastian demanded. "Lord Oliver is gone." Mrs. Wren's maid found the schoolroom empty. Lavinia stepped backward. "That is impossible. I left him there only minutes ago." The bell rang a third time. Catherine looked up at the winter nursery window. A small hand struck the glass from inside. Then another hand appeared behind the child and pulled him out of sight. Catherine reached the upper corridor before Sebastian. The winter nursery door was locked. A newly fitted iron key remained in the outer lock, but the handle would not turn. "The bolt has been drawn from inside," Mr. Harrow said. Catherine struck the door with her palm. "Oliver, can you hear me?" A faint cough answered. Sebastian arrived with Lavinia and 2 footmen. "Break it down." "No," Catherine said. "The door opens outward. If Oliver is lying behind it, the falling panel could crush him. Sebastian's impatience gave way to fear. Then how do we enter? Catherine ran into the adjoining linen room and pulled the blankets from the lowest cupboard. Behind them was a wooden grill connected to the air channel she had designed years earlier. The screws lay loose on the shelf. Someone had opened it recently. "The passage is too narrow for an adult," Sebastian said, "but not for me if I turn sideways." Before he could stop her, Catherine removed the grill and crawled into the shaft. Dust coated her hands. The narrow walls pressed against her shoulders as she dragged herself toward the nursery. Halfway through, she smelled charcoal. The nursery fire had not been lit that morning. "Open the windows as soon as you enter," she called back. She reached the inner grill and pushed against it. It did not move. Someone had fastened a strip of cloth around the latch. Catherine pulled a small metal pin from her hair, worked it beneath the knot, and tore the cloth free. The grill opened. She fell into the nursery. Oliver lay beneath the window, barely conscious. A red stain marked the corner of his mouth. Catherine lifted him. "Oliver, look at me." His eyelids trembled. "Mama, I am here. What did you drink?" "The medicine." "Who gave it to you?" He struggled to answer. "The lady said Papa ordered it." Across the room, a small charcoal brazier burned inside the fireplace recess. A sheet of tin covered the upper vent, forcing the fumes back into the nursery. Catherine wrapped Oliver in a curtain, carried him to the window, and smashed the glass with a brass candlestick. Cold air rushed into the room. Behind her, the door shook as the footman struck the hinges. The frame broke, and Sebastian entered through the opening, his face drained of color when he saw Oliver in Catherine's arms. What happened? He was given the same red cordial Amelia received. Then someone shut him inside with burning charcoal. Lavinia stopped at the threshold. "That is impossible. Oliver was in the schoolroom when I left him. He says a lady gave him the medicine. There are dozens of women in this house, but only one woman was responsible for watching him." Sebastian looked at Lavinia. "Where is your maid?" "I sent her to the kitchen." Then Oliver was left alone? Only for a moment. Catherine carried her son into the linen room, where the air was clear. Oliver clung to her neck when Sebastian tried to take him. "No, Papa." Sebastian lowered his arms. Catherine laid the boy on a chaise and asked Harrow to bring warm blankets, clean water, and the village physician from Blackmere, not Dr. Vale. Lavinia's composure slipped. "Dr. Vale knows Oliver's constitution. So did the person who measured how much medicine would weaken him without killing him," Catherine replied. Catherine returned to the nursery, while Sebastian remained beside Oliver. The charcoal brazier had been placed carefully. It had not been carried through the main door. No soot or ash marked the carpet. Near the fireplace, a narrow panel stood slightly open. Catherine pulled it wider. Behind it was an old service cavity running between the nursery and the unused eastern staircase. It was large enough for one person to pass through. Catherine had ordered it sealed during the renovations. The nails had been removed from the inside. "Who knew this passage existed?" Sebastian asked from behind her. "You signed the renovation plans." "I asked who else knew." "Your mother, Dr. Vale, the estate surveyor, and anyone they chose to tell." Catherine knelt near the brazier. Beneath it lay a broken piece of red sealing wax. A single letter remained impressed in its surface. V. Sebastian picked it up, but said nothing. Catherine examined the fireplace recess. Amelia had written that she hid her message where the air goes. Catherine pressed her fingers along the lower edge of the brass grill. One section moved. Behind it was a shallow compartment containing a small crimson bottle, a blue ribbon, and a torn page from a medical ledger. The ribbon had belonged to Amelia. Catherine unfolded the ledger page. Two names appeared in Dr. Vale's handwriting: Lady Amelia Ashbourne, 12 drops. Below it, Lord Oliver Ashbourne, 6 drops. Beside both names were observations about sleep, breathing, and confusion. Sebastian read over her shoulder. Those could be ordinary treatment notes. Catherine pointed to the date beside Amelia's final dose. Sebastian went still. The entry had been written 3 days after their daughter's funeral. At the bottom of the page was a brief instruction. If the mother continues to question the treatment, obtain the Duke's authorization before the boy's next illness. Catherine looked at her husband. What authorization did you give Dr. Vale? Sebastian's silence answered before he did. A document allowing him to act if your grief became dangerous. Dangerous to whom? He said you might try to remove Oliver from the estate, and you signed it without showing me. Sebastian looked toward the linen room where their son lay recovering. I believed I was protecting him. You placed him in the hands of the man who recorded how much drug it would take to silence him. Footsteps sounded in the corridor. Mr. Harrow appeared at the broken doorway, breathing hard. Your Graces, Thomas Reed has escaped from the gatehouse. Sebastian turned sharply. How? The guard was struck from behind. Reed left this behind. Harrow held out a brass token bearing the faded emblem of St. Agnes Hospice. Catherine recognized the name. The institution had supposedly closed 12 years earlier. On the back, Thomas had scratched 6 hurried words. Your daughter left Ashbourne alive. North Road. Catherine closed her hand around the token. For 8 months, Sebastian had demanded that she accept Amelia's death. Now the dead child's ribbon lay in one hand, and proof that someone had continued dosing her after her burial lay in the other. The village physician arrived within the hour. Dr. Mercer examined Oliver, confirmed that the boy had been given a heavy sedative, and ordered him kept warm and watched through the night. He could not identify the exact mixture without testing the bottle, but he agreed it was not a normal children's tonic. Sebastian placed the crimson bottle and Vale's ledger page inside a locked cabinet. Catherine took the key. This time he did not object. Oliver was sleeping safely with Mrs. Finch when Harrow returned from the gatehouse. The guard remembers nothing after someone struck him, the steward reported. One horse is missing from the eastern stable. Reed took the north road. Or someone wants us to believe he did, Catherine said. Sebastian studied the brass token Thomas had left behind. St. Agnes has been closed since I was a boy. Then why was he carrying its token? Lavinia stood near the door. A desperate man may leave any false trail that keeps us from finding him. Catherine turned to Harrow. Place 2 trusted servants outside Oliver's room. Mrs. Wren is not to approach him. Sebastian hesitated. Catherine looked directly at him. Our son was taken while under her supervision. After a long silence, Sebastian nodded. Do as her grace says. Lavinia's face tightened, but she left without protest. Catherine, Sebastian, and Harrow followed the north road. Fresh hoofprints crossed the snow before turning toward an abandoned toll-keeper's cottage near the estate boundary. They found the missing horse tied behind the building. Thomas Reed sat inside beside a cold fireplace, pressing a blood-stained cloth against his injured hand. He rose when they entered, but made no attempt to run. I left the token so her grace would find me, he said. You could have spoken at the gatehouse, Sebastian replied. Not while someone inside Ashbourne was trying to silence me. Thomas explained that the guard had been attacked by a man wearing a stable coat. When the door opened, Thomas fled rather than wait to discover whether the intruder had come to free him or kill him. Catherine placed Amelia's ribbon on the table. Tell me what happened the night my daughter was taken. Thomas stared at the ribbon. Dr. Vale hired me to drive a closed carriage from the eastern gate. He said the passenger was a fever patient who had to be moved before dawn. You knew it was Amelia. Not at first. She was wrapped in blankets. But halfway along the north road, she began to cough. Then she called for you. Catherine gripped the edge of the table. Was she conscious? Only for a moment. She asked where her blue ribbon was. Vale gave her more medicine, and she stopped speaking. Sebastian's voice was unsteady. Where did you take her? St. Agnes Hospice. That building was empty. The upper floors were. Vale used rooms beneath the old chapel. Thomas pulled a folded receipt from inside his coat. It recorded payment for a carriage journey made on the night of Amelia's supposed death. The sum had been charged to Ashbourne's private medical account. At the bottom appeared Dr. Vale's signature. Beside it was a second mark, a black wax seal bearing the Ashbourne hourglass. Sebastian examined it. That seal belonged to my mother. Did the Dowager Duchess give you the order? Catherine asked. I never saw her face. A veiled woman met Vale at St. Agnes. She wore the same black mourning ring the Dowager wears. She paid me and warned that my wife would suffer if I spoke. What happened to your wife? 2 days later, she disappeared. Vale told me she had been taken to a private institution because she was unwell. He promised she would be released if I obeyed. Why return to Ashbourne now? Vale sent word that the nursery had to be sealed before anyone found what Amelia hid there. I agreed because I thought it might lead me to my wife. Thomas looked at Catherine. But when the message fell from the wall, I knew Vale had lied. Amelia had been awake longer than he claimed. Catherine showed him the medical entry dated 3 days after the funeral. Thomas read it and went pale. She was alive at St. Agnes. Sebastian moved toward the door. We leave at once. No, Catherine said. First we take Thomas to the magistrate. His statement must be recorded before anyone can make him disappear. Sebastian looked at his mother's seal on the receipt. It may have been stolen. Perhaps, Catherine said, but you will not dismiss the evidence simply because the truth may disgrace your family. He did not answer. Harrow found a small leather pouch beneath Thomas's chair. Inside was a key stamped with the emblem of St. Agnes and a recent delivery slip for lamp oil, blankets, and children's medicine. The supplies had been delivered only 6 days earlier. The hospice was not abandoned, and someone was still living inside it. Thomas gave his statement before the local magistrate and was placed under protection rather than returned to Ashbourne. By the time Catherine and Sebastian reached the estate, Oliver was awake. Dr. Mercer believed the boy would recover, but ordered that no medicine be given without his approval. Catherine sat beside her son until he fell asleep again. Then she turned to Sebastian. Show me the document you signed for Vale. He led her to the library and unlocked a drawer in his desk. Inside lay a folded medical authorization bearing Sebastian's seal. Catherine read it once, then again. The first paragraph permitted Dr. Vale to treat Oliver during an emergency. The second authorized Vale to remove Catherine from the children's rooms if her conduct was judged dangerous. The final paragraph was worse. Upon declarations from her husband and attending physician, Catherine could be placed in a private institution until 2 doctors agreed she was fit to return. You gave him the power to confine me, she said. Sebastian looked at the document. Vale said it was temporary authority in case your grief caused you to harm yourself. Did you read the final paragraph? Not carefully enough. You did not read the nursery plans. You did not examine Amelia's medicine. You did not question her private death certificate, and now you have signed away my freedom without reading the words above your own name. He had no answer. Catherine placed Vale's ledger page beside the authorization. The instruction in the nursery had been clear. obtained the Duke's authorization before the boy's next illness. "Vale did not ask you to sign this because he feared for me," she said. "He needed you to make me powerless before Oliver became ill. I did not know." "No, you chose not to know." Sebastian flinched. "I trusted a physician." "You trusted everyone except your wife." The library door opened. Harrow entered carrying Catherine's household keys. Several senior servants waited behind him. Sebastian looked at the keys, then at Catherine. That morning he had humiliated her before the household. A private apology would leave his accusation intact. Catherine stepped toward the open door. "You told the servants I was no longer fit to govern this house or care for my son. Correct that lie in front of the people who heard it." For a moment, pride returned to his face. Then he looked toward the upper floor, where Oliver lay recovering from the medicine Vale had recorded. Sebastian faced the servants. "Her Grace's authority is restored in full," he said. "No order concerning the children, the nursery, or the household is valid without her knowledge. Mrs. Wren is to remain in her rooms until the magistrate questions her. Dr. Vale is forbidden to enter the estate." Harrow handed Catherine the keys. She fastened them to her belt. "This does not repair what you did," she told Sebastian. "I know." Catherine held out the authorization. "You will write across it that you revoke every power granted to Vale. Then Harrow and the magistrate will witness your signature." Sebastian obeyed. When the revocation was complete, Catherine folded both documents and placed them with the evidence from the nursery. A constable arrived shortly afterward with news from Vale's residence. The physician had disappeared. His medical cases were gone, and someone had burned several papers in the grate. Among the surviving fragments was a delivery order addressed to St. Agnes. It was dated that morning. The order requested enough sedative for one female child and instructed the supplier to deliver it before nightfall. Sebastian reached for his coat. "I am coming with you." Catherine looked toward Oliver's room. "No, you will remain with our son. You cannot go to St. Agnes without me. I will take Harrow, Thomas, and the constable. Oliver needs a parent here." Sebastian lowered his voice. "He needs you. He needed both of us. But when I warned you, you placed him under Lavinia's control. Staying with him now is the first useful thing you can do." Sebastian accepted the judgment without argument. Before Catherine left, he stopped her at the library door. "If Amelia is alive, she is not yours to mourn in the past tense anymore." Catherine took the St. Agnes key, Vale's ledger page, and the carriage receipt. Outside, the north road was already darkening beneath falling snow. Somewhere beyond the yew woods stood a hospice that had supposedly been empty for 12 years, and before nightfall, someone intended to drug the child hidden inside it. St. Agnes stood beyond a line of neglected yew trees, its stone walls dark against the snow. Catherine arrived with Harrow, Thomas, Constable Avery, and 2 officers. She carried Vale's ledger page and the key Thomas had left behind. The main entrance was chained, but the side door opened with the St. Agnes key. Inside, the air smelled of damp stone, lamp oil, and carbolic soap. "This place is not abandoned," Catherine said. A stove in the former reception room was still warm. Fresh bread sat beneath a cloth, and muddy footprints crossed the floor toward the chapel. Thomas led them downstairs. "The night I brought Amelia here, Vale carried her beneath the altar. Behind the chapel panel, the constable found a narrow staircase. It descended to 4 small rooms built below ground level. 3 were empty. In the 4th, Catherine found a child's bed, a water basin, and several drawings pinned to the wall. Every drawing showed Ashbourne Hall. One pictured Oliver beneath the nursery window. Another showed Catherine standing beside a brass grill. Above her head, Amelia had drawn the same constellation Catherine once painted across the nursery ceiling. Catherine touched the paper. She remembered. Beneath the bed lay a blue pendant Catherine had given Amelia on her 6th birthday. Thomas turned away. "I am sorry, Your Grace." Catherine closed her hand around the pendant. Grief could wait. Amelia could not. Constable Avery searched the adjoining dispensary. He found empty crimson bottles, laudanum receipts, and a register listing a patient only as AA. The earliest entry was dated the morning after Amelia's funeral. The most recent had been written that day. Patient removed at 2 o'clock. Destination changed by order of E.V. Elias Vale, Harrow said. Catherine examined the room. One wall felt colder than the others. Behind a loose ventilation grill, she discovered a folded drawing. It showed a small hunting lodge surrounded by pine trees. Amelia had marked one chimney in blue and drawn a stream behind the building. Catherine recognized it. "Briar Lodge," she said. "It belongs to the Dowager Duchess. Sebastian's mother rarely used the property, claiming the damp air worsened her health. It stood 5 miles north of St. Agnes, beyond the old quarry road. The constable found a half-burned letter in the stove. Only several lines remained legible. Move the girl before Catherine reaches the hospice. Vale will bring the medicine. Use Briar Lodge until the inquiry is stopped." No signature survived, but black sealing wax clung to the edge, the same wax Thomas had seen on the carriage receipt. A sound came from the corridor. The officers found an elderly attendant hiding inside a linen cupboard. She gave her name as Mrs. Crane and admitted caring for Amelia, but insisted she had never been told the child's true identity. "Was she alive when Vale removed her today?" Catherine asked. "Yes, weak but awake." "Who came with him?" "A woman in a gray cloak. She said the girl's mother had become dangerous and was coming to take her." "Mrs. Wren?" The attendant nodded. Catherine looked at Harrow. Lavinia had been ordered to remain in her rooms at Ashbourne. Someone inside the estate had helped her escape. Outside, officers discovered fresh carriage tracks leading north. Snow was beginning to cover them. Constable Avery ordered one man to remain at St. Agnes with Mrs. Crane and the medical records. The others returned to the horses. Thomas studied the tracks. They cannot be more than 2 hours ahead. Catherine mounted with Amelia's pendant secured beneath her cloak. 8 months earlier, Vale had carried her daughter along this road while Sebastian paid to prevent anyone from asking questions. This time, Catherine had a witness, a constable, and a destination. And at Briar Lodge, Amelia was still alive. Briar Lodge appeared through the falling snow shortly before dusk. Fresh carriage tracks ended beside the stable. Smoke rose from one chimney, though every curtain had been drawn. Constable Avery divided his men between the front entrance and the rear road. Catherine, Harrow, and Thomas remained with him. "No one enters alone," Avery warned. "If Vale is inside, he may be armed." The constable knocked and announced his authority. No one answered. A moment later, an upstairs window opened. Lavinia threw a leather case into the snow, then attempted to climb onto the sloping roof. An officer waiting below ordered her to stop. She retreated into the room. Avery forced the front door. Inside, the lodge was nearly empty. The dining table held medicine bottles, bandages, and travel papers. A fire burned in the grate, but no child was visible. "Amelia," Catherine called. Silence answered. Then she heard 3 faint knocks. They came from inside the wall. Catherine followed the sound to a narrow passage beside the kitchen. Warm air moved through a brass grill near the floor. Behind it, someone knocked again. "The room is on the other side," she said. Harrow found a concealed door beneath the staircase. It had been covered with the same wallpaper as the surrounding wall. Constable Avery broke the lock. Dr. Vale stood inside beside a small bed. One hand held a crimson bottle, the other pressed a cloth against Amelia's mouth. "Step away from the child," Avery ordered. Vale released her and raised his hands. Amelia lay motionless beneath a gray blanket. Catherine crossed the room and gathered her daughter into her arms. The girl was painfully thin, but she was breathing. "Amelia, it is Mama." Her eyelids opened. For several seconds, she stared without recognition. Then her fingers touched Catherine's face. "You found the air," she whispered. Catherine held her tightly. "I found you." Vale attempted to claim that Amelia was dangerously ill and had been hidden for her own protection. Constable Avery showed him Sebastian's written revocation of his medical authority. "You will explain that to the magistrate," he said. Lavinia was caught at the rear entrance, carrying the leather case she had thrown from the window. Inside were forged letters describing Catherine as violent, several blank medical certificates, and the black sealing wax used on the carriage receipt. "I never harmed the girl," Lavinia insisted. "I only followed Dr. Vale's instructions." "You gave Oliver the red cordial," Catherine said. Lavinia did not answer. Dr. Mercer had followed in a second carriage. He examined Amelia and confirmed that she was weak from repeated sedation and poor nourishment, but stable enough to be moved. Catherine remained beside her while the officers searched the lodge. Among Vale's papers, Harrow found Amelia's false death certificate and a letter written in Sebastian's hand. Catherine recognized it before she broke the seal. "I accept your conclusion concerning Amelia's death. Arrange the burial without further examination. Any expense required to avoid public inquiry may be charged to my private account." The letter was dated the morning after Amelia supposedly died. Attached to it was a receipt for the payment Vale had taken from Sebastian. Catherine read the words again. Sebastian had not known Amelia was alive, but he had paid to ensure no one asked how she died. Vale watched her from across the room. "Your husband feared scandal more than he wanted the truth," he said. "I merely gave him the silence he purchased." Catherine folded the letter and placed it with the other evidence. She carried Amelia outside while the constables took Vale and Lavinia into custody. Her daughter was alive, but the man waiting at Ashbourne had buried an empty coffin, silenced every question Catherine asked, and paid the person who stole their child. Bringing Amelia home would not restore the marriage Sebastian had destroyed. Amelia was taken to Catherine's rooms rather than the nursery. Dr. Mercer ordered quiet, warm broth, and several days without questioning. After months of sedation, the child woke in short, frightened intervals and panicked whenever the door closed. Catherine ordered every lock removed. Oliver was brought to see her the following morning. He stood beside the bed without speaking until Amelia reached for his hand. Only then did he begin to cry. Sebastian watched from the doorway. Amelia saw him and immediately withdrew beneath the blankets. He stepped back. "I will not come closer," he said. Catherine waited until both children were asleep before summoning him to the adjoining room. She placed his letter to Vale on the table. "Explain it." Sebastian read the words he had written 8 months earlier. "Vale told me Amelia died because smoke entered the nursery through the vents. He said an inquiry would expose your alterations to the room and accuse you of causing her death. So you prevented one. I believed I was protecting you and Oliver from scandal. You were protecting the Ashbourne name. He did not deny it. "Did you see Amelia's body?" "No." Vale said the illness might be infectious. He advised a closed coffin. "And you accepted that?" "I had just been told my daughter was dead. So had I. Yet I asked questions." Sebastian lowered his eyes. Catherine's voice remained steady. "You did not know she was alive. But you made certain no coroner, physician, or magistrate would discover it. I know. No, you know it now. For 8 months, you called me unstable because I refused to accept the silence you purchased." Sebastian looked toward the bedroom where Amelia slept. "My payment gave Vale time to hide her." "Yes." "And when you warned me about Oliver, I took your keys and placed him under Lavinia's supervision." "Yes." Each answer stripped away another excuse. Sebastian did not ask forgiveness. "I will give the magistrate the letter, the account records, and every document Vale sent me," he said. "I will testify that I paid him. You will also admit that you publicly accused me and signed an authorization that could have imprisoned me." "I will." Catherine took the letter from him. "Do not mistake confession for repair. Amelia lost 8 months. Oliver nearly died. I lived beside an empty room while you taught this household to distrust me. I understand. You cannot understand it yet." A cry came from the bedroom. Catherine returned at once. Amelia was awake, staring at the portrait hanging opposite the bed. It showed Sebastian as a child beside the Dowager Duchess. Catherine sat beside her. "What frightened you?" Amelia pointed toward her grandmother's hand in the portrait. The Dowager wore a black mourning ring. "The lady at St. Agnes had that ring," Amelia whispered. Catherine felt Sebastian stop behind her. "Are you certain?" he asked. Amelia recoiled at his voice. Catherine raised one hand, and he withdrew from the room. She turned back to her daughter. "You do not have to tell me anything else." But Amelia tightened her fingers around Catherine's sleeve. "Grandmama said questions make girls dangerous." Catherine looked toward Sebastian. His mother's seal had appeared on the carriage receipt. Her ring had been seen at St. Agnes. Briar Lodge belonged to her. For the first time, Sebastian did not defend her. Outside, the chapel bell began to ring. A servant entered, carrying a note from the Dowager Duchess's residence. She had left Ashbourne before dawn, and several boxes of estate records had disappeared with her. Constable Avery sent riders after the Dowager Duchess's carriage. They stopped it at the Northern Bridge, but found only 2 servants and several boxes of harmless correspondence. The Dowager was not inside. "The carriage was a diversion," Catherine said. "She never left Ashbourne." A smell of smoke drifted through the corridor. It came from the winter nursery. Sebastian moved toward the stairs, but Amelia woke at the sound of the alarm and clung to Catherine. Oliver began crying beside her. Catherine placed both children with Mrs. Finch. "Stay with them," she told Sebastian. "My mother is upstairs." "Then let the constable pursue her. Your children need to see you choose them." Sebastian looked toward the smoke, then closed the bedroom door and remained inside. Catherine, Harrow, and Constable Avery reached the nursery together. The Dowager Duchess stood beside the fireplace, feeding estate papers into a small fire. A leather ledger lay open on the table. Avery blocked the door. "You are not permitted to remove or destroy those records." The Dowager did not look at him. "This is family property. It is evidence," Catherine said. The older woman seized the ledger and moved toward the concealed service panel. Catherine stepped in front of it. "Amelia hid that book in the nursery, didn't she?" The Dowager's composure finally broke. She had no right to read it. She was a child. She was becoming like you, prying into matters that preserved this family. A burning page fell from the grate and caught the edge of a curtain. Harrow pulled it down and smothered the flame with a rug before it could spread. Constable Avery took the ledger. Its entries showed repeated transfers from the Children's Trust into accounts controlled by the Dowager. Vale had disguised the payments as medical expenses. Several financed St. Agnes, Briar Lodge, and the men who altered the nursery vents. Catherine turned a page. There was also a payment to Thomas Reed and an order to prepare confinement papers for her. "You stole from your grandchildren," Catherine said. "I used their money to protect Ashbourne's alliances. Sebastian was too weak to manage what his father left him. So you used Vale to silence anyone who discovered it." Amelia should have forgotten what she saw. Vale promised the medicine would confuse her memory. When she continued writing messages, he suggested declaring her dead until the danger passed. 8 months is not protection. It was necessary. Constable Avery closed the ledger. That statement will be recorded before the magistrate. The Dowager looked toward the doorway, expecting Sebastian to appear and defend her. He did not. For once, he had remained with his children. As the officers escorted his mother downstairs, Sebastian came only as far as the landing. Amelia and Oliver stood behind him with Mrs. Finch. The Dowager stopped. "You would allow servants to watch your mother taken away?" Sebastian looked at the ledger in Avery's hands. "You took my daughter, endangered my son, and used my pride to destroy my wife's credibility. I preserved your name. No, you taught me to value it more than the people who carried it." He stepped aside. The Dowager was taken to the magistrate's residence under guard. The recovered ledger, Vale's medical records, Sebastian's payment letter, Amelia's false death certificate, and Thomas's statement were sealed as evidence. A preliminary inquiry was set for 3 days later. Before leaving the nursery, Catherine looked at the wall where Amelia's first message had been found. The truth had survived because her daughter believed her mother would know where to look. Now Catherine had to make the magistrates believe it too. The preliminary inquiry was held 3 days later before 2 magistrates. Amelia and Oliver remained upstairs with Mrs. Finch. Catherine refused to make either child testify, while the documentary evidence and adult witnesses were sufficient. Vale's solicitor argued that Catherine had become obsessed after her daughter's death and had interpreted ordinary medical records as proof of conspiracy. Catherine answered with a clear sequence of evidence. The stationer confirmed that Amelia's message had been written on paper sold after her supposed burial. Dr. Mercer testified that both children had received a dangerous sedative. Thomas described driving Amelia alive to St. Agnes. Mrs. Crane identified the child as the patient recorded there under the initials AA. Constable Avery submitted Amelia's false death certificate, Vale's ledger, the forged letters found with Lavinia, and the Dowager's financial records. Together, they showed that money from the Children's Trust had been disguised as medical expenses and used to maintain St. Agnes, pay Thomas, alter the nursery vents, and prepare Catherine's confinement. Vale claimed Sebastian's payment proved the Duke had approved everything. The senior magistrate turned to him. "Did you authorize your daughter's removal?" "No," Sebastian said, "but I authorized the silence that allowed it." He produced his letter ordering burial without further examination. "I paid Vale because I feared an inquiry would disgrace my family. Catherine asked me to investigate. I refused, called her unstable, removed her authority, and signed a document that could have confined her." His mother stared at him. "You would ruin Ashbourne for her?" Sebastian faced the room. "No, I nearly ruined my wife and children for Ashbourne." He surrendered his private accounts, correspondence, and seal records for examination. The magistrates did not deliver final verdicts. They ruled that sufficient evidence existed to hold Vale, Lavinia, and the Dowager Duchess, while formal charges were prepared. They also ordered an independent investigation into Amelia's false death certificate, a full audit of the Children's Trust, the closure and search of St. Agnes, protection for Thomas and Mrs. Crane as witnesses, the cancellation of every medical authority Vale had obtained over Catherine or her children. Catherine's name was formally removed from the confinement petition. Outside the chamber, Sebastian approached her. "I will make the same confession before the household and Parliament." "Do it because it is true," Catherine said, "not because you expect it to bring me back." "I understand." This time, she believed he understood the words. But understanding was only the beginning of his punishment. The formal proceedings lasted several months. Vale was convicted of abducting Amelia, falsifying her death certificate, administering dangerous drugs, and conspiring to confine Catherine. Lavinia was convicted of assisting Amelia's imprisonment, forging letters, and giving Oliver the sedative. The Dowager Duchess was found responsible for financing the scheme and stealing from the Children's Trust. Her control over the family accounts ended, and her property was used to repay what had been taken. Sebastian was not charged with knowing that Amelia was alive. But before his household and Parliament, he admitted what he had done. "I rejected my wife's evidence, called her unstable, paid to prevent an inquiry, and signed away her freedom without reading the document. Others used those choices, but they did not make them for me." He withdrew from public office and moved into the Western Lodge. Through solicitors and independent trustees, Catherine received control of her own residence, income, and the children's daily care. Sebastian agreed that Amelia and Oliver would see him only when they felt safe. He did not ask Catherine to forgive him. 1 year later, the winter nursery reopened as a schoolroom. Catherine removed every outer lock, widened the windows, and restored the air channels. Amelia painted stars across the ceiling. Oliver helped fit the new brass grills. Sebastian attended the opening, but waited at the back until Amelia invited him closer. Catherine stood beside the wall where the first message had been found. Sebastian approached her quietly. "I once believed certainty made me strong," he said. "It only made me dangerous." Catherine looked toward their children. "I may one day forgive you," she replied, "but forgiveness will not restore the marriage you destroyed." He accepted the words without bargaining. Amelia opened the first window. Oliver opened the second. Cold, clean air moved through the room, carrying away the last smell of smoke and medicine. For 8 months, the truth had been trapped inside the walls. Now every window stood open.